Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. I hope you guys are having a great day. Well, we have the S&P 500 sets another record high today, and PLTR down just slightly, but holding a good level of support. We're going to be talking about a technical pattern that we're observing that could allow a bullish push in momentum for PLTR, possibly testing its 52-week year-to-date high around those 27s. Also, in addition, we're going to be talking about some of the catalysts that are behind PLTR and also why it's one of the most trendy and most searched stocks right now and what this really means for the future of the stock. Now, if you are a new or returning viewer, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe for daily videos, and of course, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm collecting all the data and dispatching it to you. Now, quickly, what we see on the charts here, closing here at 24.51, down about 1.5% on the day. You see the markets here, S&P 500, Dow Jones, NASDAQ, all up about 0.5 to 1%. Great to see here. We're seeing a little bit of a rebound. PLTR, remember, traded in the green yesterday when a lot of the big indexes were actually down in the red. What we see with Palantir, holding this little area right here at 24.51. Now, if we bring this trend line down here, we have many touch points really specifically at this area, but not a ton of foundational support. That is more observed kind of at these reversal points here, down at the 23.40 area, and also right here at the mid 23s. But if we see consolidation here, and specifically if we zoom in on the charts, you can see starting to form support at the 24.50 area. That is great. Establishing these small micro levels of support that can lead to more reliable levels when things do come down or when there's more pressure in terms of a bearish potential. Now, if we come back out, what we're seeing with Palantir in terms of the actual kind of 30-minute chart is more of a head and shoulders formation. You can see right here, here's a head, or here's a shoulder, here's a head and a shoulder right here, which is typically bullish for the stock. And what we have seen right here, this setup is looking very well in terms of bullish momentum that could be coming here within the next few months. If we toggle over here to what's happening with the options for PLTR, you have at the $25 strike price and even at the 26, about a 10,000 amount in terms of call volume. Now, we do not have trading on Friday. That's going to be on 3/29, just so you guys know, for Good Friday. So this is for end of the week expirations. This is going to be tomorrow, actually. We need to keep that in mind. It's Easter weekend, everybody. Now, what we want to talk about, what's happening in the media today is right here. Yahoo Finance coming out with basically Palantir is one of the most searched stocks right now. We talked about this, what this means in the past is that PLTR carries a lot of trendiness behind it. And specifically right here, you can see some of the key factors that could influence the stock's performance in the near future is just due to the hype that is behind PLTR, number one. Number two, the AI demand and the boom in general. And number three, what the market momentum is right now. If we specifically look at one of the main drivers in AI, that is NVIDIA, which we saw actually a little bit of a pullback today. NVIDIA recently tested this kind of year-to-date high at the 974, and what we see here is a little bit of a pullback at the 900s. Now, NVIDIA is a main driver in this AI marketplace, and specifically within the markets that we're talking about. But PLTR, one of the big bullish signs that I continue to stay very bullish on the stock is the revision earning estimates that we are seeing. And if we toggle over here, specifically looking, we've talked about this before, but if you're new to the channel, the earnings per share revisions in the last 90 days is 16 in terms of the bullish direction. Why this is important is because earnings still has a decent amount of time until it happens. It's going to be happening here May 8th post-market at earnings per share of about 8 cents. However, PLTR, even given the earnings per share revisions that have continued to trend in the bullish directions, have always resulted in beating their earnings expectations within the previous few quarters. And we have the 4 quarters and now the 5 quarters of GAAP profitability. In yesterday's video, we talked about Alex Karp saying that he expects another fiscal year of GAAP profitability. And what we're seeing for the 12-month earning per share, the revenue growth forecast right here, they're estimating $614.88 million for the current quarter over here of over 17.1% change. And for the fiscal years coming up here, indicating changes of 20.6 and 21.3% respectively, talking about here for the actual quarter points. Now, with the earnings surprise that we've seen, looking at last quarter, what we saw with PLTR, This was the gap that was created coming up here from the 16s. Remember when PLTR was sitting here from the 15, 16s? One of the biggest judgments for the stock was that it was overvalued, and that we saw this gap being created here after they had basically a historical earnings. We talked about it before with those commercial results in terms of that 70% increase. One of the biggest metrics that came out from that earnings report is now, what is the next earnings going to bring us? And will that give us enough momentum to push PLTR into the 30s? And I think in the short term, and just specifically kind of throwing numbers out here, I think that's entirely possible. If we look at PLTR right now, sitting at a market cap of $54 billion, still under $100 billion, and underneath that $200 billion kind of, I want to say, going and transitioning to that mid-cap type of stock. So PLTR, in terms of its price right now, is still kind of in its infancy. Given the valuation, yes, it does have a high valuation. I can't agree less, more. We talk about that all the time. You can see here valuation grades and Seeking Alpha, all D minuses in Fs. It's like your high school report card. I'm an affiliation with, I'm a partner with Seeking Alpha too. So if you want 20% off all the data, make sure you check out my link down in the description, because you can get 20% off for all the data that I do collect. However, what you see here, growth, profitability, momentum, revisions, all A pluses here. And what this is telling me is PLTR is continuing to explode in terms of momentum. However, in terms of the actual fundamentals that are behind PLTR, what people are talking about, yes, it does trade at a high premium right now. But so do all the other AI stocks. So do all the other SaaS stocks right now. We looked at metrics on how PLTR in terms of price to sales ratio compares to a lot of the other AI stocks right now. And just look at NVIDIA, for example. Look at this. Look at this valuation. And yet we're still seeing possibly getting here to $1,000 here within the year. So what this tells me is PLTR is really growing into its valuation. And right now it's going to stay at a high valuation, specifically for this reason right here, is because we have the earnings per share revisions that are continuing to grow. And earnings, and specifically valuation, that is basically a gauge on what future earnings are going to report. We talk about this all the time. And if everybody, including retail and institutional investors, PLTR has a pretty short percent volume right now and percent of shares that are short, most people are bullish on the stock, which means people are betting that the price is going to increase. So it only makes sense and why we're seeing a high valuation. Specifically here, even with it being the most trendy stock that's right now here, according to Zacks research, being on one of the top lists for their kind of databases, what we're seeing is a great pure play here. Specifically, one of the biggest catalysts that we've talked about, and we've seen this carried out to be true for PLTR, is their involvement into the private sector. And that's with introducing AIP, not just solely relying on the governmental contracts and not just solely relying on that governmental revenue. It was a great way to establish credibility and trust. But now that the fact that they have the tools and the momentum to dive, and what we're seeing in terms of a commercial perspective, PLTR kind of has this infinite possibility to grow, especially with the amount of momentum that's coming into AI stocks in general. So that's really all that I have for you guys. It'll be interesting to see what we do have happen in terms of that trading pattern. If we see trading that's going to slow down a little bit here just because it's Easter. Otherwise, that's really all that I have for you guys. Take out, peace out, and I'll catch you guys later.